Innovation doesn't fear regulation, but it does fear regulation by yesterday's methods. These are the provoking words of Jack Ma. He uttered them to hundreds, if not thousands, of executives present at the Bund Financial Summit in Shanghai in October of 2020. At the summit, he criticized China's banking regulations and, by extension, the CCP. One can say that these were the famous last words of Jack Ma, before everything in his life turned upside down. Jack Ma had poked the CCP bare, and he paid dearly for it. Jack Ma has gone from a global entrepreneurial figure that all of China revered, to a lesson to what happened to a modern-day Icarus. To properly understand how the CCP, under the leadership of President Xi Jinping, disarmed and dismembered the legacy of Jack Ma, we first need to understand the billionaire and his empire. Ma had humble beginnings, a fact that made all that came later in his life all the more valuable. He was born in 1964 to an ordinary family in Hangzhou. His parents worked as performers in the art of traditional musical storytelling. Considering that Ma was raised in this environment, it can explain, at least in part, his ability to capture a crowd and paint a picture with just his words. What's remarkable about his upbringing is that, unlike your regular Bill Gates or Steve Jobs story, Ma was never really academically inclined or well put together. Unlike CCP, which has its 50-cent cost-bought army to create distractions and downvote any videos critical of the communist government. I'm sure this video will be a prime target, so if you guys could just take a second and hit the like button below to help me out. Anyways, back to Jack Ma. Ma was never really academically inclined or well put together. It actually took him 3 years to pass the country's toughest test to get into college after several attempts. Growing up, even KFC turned him down for a restaurant job just because of how disheveled he always looked. His eventual entry into college was not even based on his mathematical prowess, but on the English skills he had. These are the skills that he had picked up as he spent years showing foreigners around his coastal city hometown. See everyone? Even the so-called mundane tasks or jobs can help you in life. In the 90s, he began pushing for the internet in China at a time when barely anyone knew what the internet was or why it was viable. This culminated in him starting an internet startup company during his teaching years post-graduation. The internet startup, named China Pages, served to create web pages for businesses. The foundations had been laid. By the mid-90s, China was changing fast, as the then Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping was embracing change. This gave Jack Ma the space to grow his China Pages, just as the nation was embracing this new era. His relationship with the company ended sadly, however, when he was forced to sell it to a local champion in Hangzhou who was state-backed. For years to come, that experience shaped what Ma defined as his relationship with the state. As we shall later find out, when it came to state matters, he always kept it respectful, but distanced. Ma would often tell his employees that when it came to the government, be in love with the government, but don't marry them. This would also explain why, though Ma was a CPP party member, he never joined China's official parliament, the National People's Congress, or even its consultative body. This was a deviation from most of his big league counterparts, who cozied up to the CCP as much as they could. Having served in the government for a little bit and gathered experience in various circles, in 1999, Ma, together with his friends, conjured and realized their dream to launch Alibaba. This was a company that was aimed to be a bridge between Chinese factories that had cheap goods and buyers around the world. The key part was that this was going to happen online, over the internet. The idea was a success, to say the least. China was filled with inexpensive goods that could be manufactured in its industries, and the world became an open market, with Alibaba connecting suppliers with buyers. It became the start of something grand. Over the years that followed, Ma built Alibaba into a strong company that gained the envy of everyone globally. By 2015, Ma's influence was undeniable. He was not only China's richest man, but he was a global icon. In previous years, he had fought with Yahoo and some other foreign investors over the runnings of his company. But those squabbles didn't diminish investor appetite for the $25 billion float of Alibaba in New York in 2014. What this meant was that Alibaba was the world's largest ever stock market flotation. Tech companies such as Ant, a derivative of Alibaba that Ma controlled, had begun to show the world that China could innovate too. Ma became a symbol of what was possible as the government promoted entrepreneurship to alleviate pressure on finding work for millions of new university graduates. With the state's backing, Ma's empire was growing. At this point, the CCP held him close, with Ma even accompanying President Xi to the US on a visit. One could say that Ma's fall was predictable and could be seen from a mile away. And honestly, they wouldn't be wrong. As Ma grew in influence, both his cockiness and that of his company grew. This can be evidenced when they were called out by a regulator in 2015 for selling counterfeit goods, and they responded by saying on social media, "Director Liu Hongliang, you're breaking the rules. Stop being a crooked referee." And while a peaceful resolution was reached between Alibaba and regulators, many saw this as a sign of Ma challenging the greater authority, which by extension is the CCP. As Ma continued to travel around the globe and meet officials of various countries, being viewed as a Chinese ambassador when it came to all things tech, Beijing began to grow wary. Remember when I said that Ma was blessed with the gift to speak and compel? Well, that gift was landing him in trouble. Ma had a bad habit of saying antagonizing things that the CCP interpreted negatively. And when you add this to his being viewed as the Chinese voice, the CCP certainly did not like that situation. Official unease was becoming clearer. Ma failed to take this as a sign to slow down, and instead ramped things up, further antagonizing the CCP. The Financial Times said that a source close to the government said of the situation, "What he was saying both publicly and privately could be embarrassing for China." After he returned home, they always had to debrief him and ask about his trips. Ma was already under scrutiny and in trouble, and he didn't even understand the severity of it. This made him careless with his speech, at a time when he should have been careful. Now, many of the things that Ma said were correct, and still stand true to this day. But in China, that kind of talk from an influencer like him is not acceptable. This is why his speech at the Bund Financial Summit in Shanghai in October of 2020 would be his last of that magnitude. When he was talking on stage, Ma made the reckless mistake of opposing the Chinese financial world. He ridiculed the system, calling it old and outdated, while at the same time pushing for newer, better regulations that he felt would advance China more. What Ma was saying was that China's financial system needed improving. But what the CCP heard was Ma inciting people to want change. According to President Xi, Ma had openly ridiculed the CCP's systems, and he was attempting to create a new order of things. If you know anything about China and the CCP, you know that change is not acceptable in any form. Once the CCP's vice chairman of the party propaganda department gave a speech urging Chinese media to be aware of individuals and companies that would try to use wealth and resources to manipulate public perspective when it came to regulation and order, it was over. His exact words were to guard against the risk of capital manipulating public opinion. Once the statement was said, everyone knew that the jig was up. Ma was officially a target, and the CCP was now the hunter. And as with all the prey that the CCP hunts within its borders, Ma was not to escape. Shortly after the political speech and rebukes had occurred, Jack Ma disappeared from the public eye. This was very weird, as Ma had built his empire on the back of his image as the flamboyant, ever-present billionaire. He was the Iron Man of China, and now the Iron Man was gone. Events that had been scheduled for him months prior were suddenly canceled. This was inclusive of his role as a judge in an African talent show that he created. Even in the business sector, the General Association of Young Entrepreneurs that Ma chaired called off its annual conference in the absence of the chairman. Ma was absent, and it was showing. The creator was seemingly abandoned by his creations. All of these actions served to scare customers and shareholders alike. Some rumors said that Ma had fled, while others said he was in jail. Anyone with an opinion shared theirs, and the once strong Alibaba empire went into mayhem, absent its king. Because Ant's IPO had been in the works, it too suffered alongside Alibaba. Ma would later appear in a few videos online, speaking at an empty school, in what was a clear attempt at publicity, but it was too mild. Jack Ma's disappearing spells would continue, with him disappearing and popping up, only for him to disappear again. This is still something that's happening today. Ma had poked the bear, and the bear, President Xi Jinping's government, lashed out with a ferocity that shocked the world. The much-anticipated IPO of Ant Group, expected to be the largest in history, was abruptly canceled by regulators just days before its launch. This move was the first of many blows aimed at dismantling Ma's empire. The government ordered Ant to restructure under the watchful eye of the central bank, allowing state-controlled entities to gain substantial control. This was just the beginning. Ant's once thriving money market fund was slashed to a fraction of its former size, costing billions. But the crackdown didn't stop there. In April 2021, Alibaba was hit with a record $2.8 billion fine for antitrust violations. The pressure continued to mount as key services were stripped away, and Alibaba's stock price plummeted to a fraction of its peak value. Meanwhile, Ma's personal fortune shrank, and he lost his title as China's richest man. Beyond the financial hits, Ma's legacy took a significant blow. He was removed as president of Hupan University, the elite business school he founded. The university, once a beacon of innovation, was forced to suspend new enrollments, its credibility in tatters. President Xi had made an example of Ma, showing that in China, no one is too big to be brought down. The message was clear. The Chinese Communist Party comes first, and everyone else must fall in line. Since then, Xi and his administration has cracked down on other billionaires and tech companies, stating that they were growing too influential. These crackdowns have resulted in the loss of billions in valuation in the tech sector. The CCP's stance on the issue has been rebranded as a national rejuvenation, with people in favor of the purge stating that it's time that all in China's billionaire class be taught a lesson, and that they have to keep in mind the public and social responsibility of wealth. The Chinese capitalistic economic engine that Deng Xiaoping built has run into a roadblock that is none other than President Xi. The national rejuvenation that China speaks of will see the capitalist economy merge once again with a more socialistic view of things. So, the billionaire class has been clipped of their wings, with several having left China, while others have handed out portions of their fortunes as charity and pledged to toe the party line in the future. If they don't, well, they know what happens. Even in 2024, the story of Jack Ma and the CCP is still ongoing, but this time, he's returned with a renewed focus. He's not charging ahead in the tech world of China. Instead, Ma has pivoted towards agriculture and education, sectors that align closely with the strategic priorities of President Xi Jinping's government. In this way, the hassle seems to be settled down between CCP and Ma, but that's not the only peculiar thing. Ma spends most of his time outside China and Japan, where it's said that he's taken up the study of art and farming. That can be seen as a humbling return to his roots. His business interests have slowly been taken from him, and the CCP's state-owned organizations now control parts of Ant and Alibaba. This unexpected decision and withdrawal from a high-ranking position from Ma isn't just a retreat from the high-stakes pressures of the tech industry. It's a deliberate alignment with China's national interests. The Chinese government saw the surging influence on the tech world of Ma, and instead of completely eliminating him from the Chinese economic game, they decided to redirect his career into a new, unprecedented industry. Now, by investing in these areas, Ma is playing a long game, rebuilding his public image and staying relevant in a country where tech entrepreneurs were walking on thin ice. Bolstering food security and revitalizing rural areas is not what he used to do, but the move ensures that he remains influential, even in a political environment where the rules of the game can change overnight. Meanwhile, Alibaba, the tech giant that Ma built, has undergone a significant transformation. The company is split into 6 distinct business units, a restructuring aimed at making it more nimble in an increasingly competitive and regulated market. Ma has publicly backed this transformation, praising the leadership of Eddie Yongming Wu and Zhou Tsai. It seems that Ma still advocates, after all that happened, for the need for Alibaba to stay ahead of the curve, particularly as artificial intelligence reshapes the tech industry. This reorganization, coupled with the cancellation of IPOs for key divisions like the cloud and logistics unit Cainiao, marks an unprecedented strategic shift for Alibaba. The company is now focused on internal stability rather than aggressive expansion, a move that mirrors the broader industry's need to adapt to realities imposed by the Chinese government.